Well, Derek Chauvin, the officer who was seen kneeling on George Floyd's neck before he died, is due in court on Monday. Meanwhile, the other three officers on the scene are also now facing charges of their own. Our legal panel joins us now to break down all of these charges in this case, and we have former U.S. prosecutor and director of the Executive Office for United States Attorneys, Guy Lewis, and criminal defense attorney Joseph Marrone. Guys, let's start with Derek Chauvin. He's now facing up to 40 years in prison after the charges against him were upgraded from third-degree murder to second-degree murder. It is certainly a step in the right direction for George Floyd's family, who wants him to be charged with first-degree murder. But, Guy, I'll start with you. Does this upgraded charge make it more difficult for prosecutors to secure a guilty verdict?
That's a great question, Kristen. In some ways, it does. They've charged probably the most aggressive charge that the facts would allow. And I wish I could tell you that the hard part was behind us, but it's not. Now we move into the litigation phase, and there's going to be very good lawyers who come in and contest these charges. And even though you've got the video right before you, these lawyers are going to say, look, we don't know what happened before. We don't know what happened after. The ME reports are contradictory. And so there's a lot of work to do here to move this case forward.
Joseph, if you were Chauvin's attorney, how would you defend him, and would these upgraded charges change the way that you defend him?
Well, unfortunately, defending Chauvin, you have to live with the video, and the video in itself, it's not just what you see in the video; it's what the video actually, the evidence it gives you, and it gives you a restraint of over 8.5 minutes, 2.5 at the end, which there was no response. So the question first becomes:
how do you defend against that?
Well, I think the battle is going to be on the level of charges. You have a second-degree murder charge, which really is a felony murder charge. Can you prove that he intended to assault Floyd and not effectuate an arrest? And that's really going to be the battle. I mean, obviously, the Chauvin's argument is going to be he was attempting to effectuate an arrest, and ultimately this was reckless behavior. But reckless behavior is third-degree murder. It's not second-degree. And you're really, if you're Chauvin's attorney, you're trying to get a lesser charge to save him some jail time. And that's going to really be the battle. I mean, ultimately, there's also a manslaughter charge, which I think is inevitable. But really, the core charge here, which is third-degree charge, that I really think what fits it. The question is, can the defense lawyer get the case down to that? And that's really going to be the complication.
So, Joseph, now the other three officers that were involved in George Floyd's death, they've been charged with aiding and abetting second-degree murder. And we've already gotten a taste of what their defense is going to be. Two of them are now essentially blaming Chauvin for all of this and saying that he was the senior officer on the scene and he should be the one that's responsible, not them. Do you agree with that?
Well, listen, it's going to be every man for himself at this point, because if you are found guilty of aiding and abetting with second degree, you're looking at 40 years, especially there's two younger officers there that were only on the force for a short period of time. But if you look at the three accomplices, Theo's not even touching him. I think they have a really weak case against Theo, but the other two officers that are actually physically handling Floyd, in proving aiding and abetting, not only does the Chauvin have to be found guilty of the underlying crime, but those other two officers have to know what crime he was trying to effectuate. They're obviously going to say he was trying to complete an arrest versus an actual assault, and you have to prove that. So it's going to be difficult. Listen, I wouldn't be surprised if those younger officers are looking for some form of cooperation here to get some leniency and really go against Chauvin, because that's really where it's going to be.
Guy, how strong of a case do you think the prosecution has against these other three officers?
Joe makes some good points, Kristen. I don't think their case is overwhelming by any stretch of the imagination. One of the officers, this was his third day on the job. Another officer, this was his fourth day on the job. Chauvin's the training officer. Their lawyers are going to say, look, what am I supposed to do? I'm 3 days on the job. I'm supposed to tell him, don't do what you're doing. He's the senior man there. And indeed, at one point, one of the officers said, hey, should we turn him over? Should we do something different? And Chauvin said no. So I think Joe makes some good points. You may see some cooperation, somebody strike a plea bargain here, and I think there's going to this case is going to be contested, despite the video, which. You know, listen, go back to Rodney King, Kristen. We saw that. Remember that case in '91? We saw that case on video. Those officers beat the living dog out of that man. That case was tried in a state court. What happened the first time around? Not guilty, despite what we saw on that video. So I think there's still a lot of work to do here.
All right, Guy and Joseph, I believe we lost Joseph just in time. But Guy and Joseph, thank you so much for your time and expertise. Really appreciate it.